An experimental therapy session promised to change my life. It did, but not how I expected. The opportunity came to me on a rainy afternoon while I was watching a documentary about recovering addicts. I received a pamphlet in my mail that advertised a free week-long therapy session described as innovative and eye-opening, completing with a promise that someone will be returning home feeling a new joy in each aspect of life, as if reborn, whatever that meant. I've been struggling for a long time, and my own therapist had raised his prices far too much for my financial status. A large corner of the paper was dedicated to the head of this event, a middle-aged brunette woman named Dr. Madison, and centered at the bottom were a phone number and email. Looking her and the project up online proved it was in fact real, and that she was a rising figure in her occupation, praised for her unique approach to therapy methods. There were text boxes to fill with the usual personal information and why you were signing up. With nothing to lose, an hour later, I had submitted my application for the project and got a response 2 days later confirming I had been approved and was told the time, date, and location and was instructed to pack some clothes as the entire session would take place in a large room furnished like an apartment. But in reality, we were in a tall corporate building and would be supervised everywhere but the bathrooms. If nothing else, this made me feel safer about having to live with total strangers for a week. I arrived by bus at the building, which was a 5-minute walk from the stop I got off at, where 4 others were already gathered in a circle having a lively chat, all of them neatly dressed, and I instantly recognized Dr. Madison, dressed in a gray suit with hair reaching her shoulders, the other 3 I assumed being my soon-to-be roommates. A young and beautiful girl with short dark hair, dressed considerably more casual than the rest of them. An older woman with visible wrinkles across her face and gray hair tied in a bun, and a rather tall, well-built man whose face muscles seemed to have forgotten how to smile. When I approached them and introduced myself, Dr. Madison welcomed me and gave me a few moments to meet the other participants of the session. The young girl was named Maria, and she gave me a shy smile as I shook her hand. The old lady was much quieter and reserved and only spoke that her name was Amanda, and the man named Ajay already looked like he did not like me. I already made a mental note that all of us obviously had a reason to be here, except for Maria, whose cheery demeanor was not what I expected to see in anyone signing up for experimental therapy. Dr. Madison walked in front of us and ran over the superficial details of the project once more, asking each of us to confirm our participation just as a formality, which I thought was obvious considering we'd already gone far enough as to show up. We entered an elevator that brought us up to the 4th floor, and she showed us to our apartment, which was actually a surprisingly wide room turned into a 4-room apartment with 2 bedrooms, a bathroom, and a living room with the kitchen at the other end. It was surprisingly well furnished, and each of us thanked her for having us. After exchanging those pleasantries, she told us more about the session. Amanda and Maria, you will be sharing that bedroom, and Ajay and Carlos the other one. You have unlimited access to television, books, music, and whatever else you see in this room. You'll be given food 3 times a day, but do not hesitate to press this button by the door to call for us should you need anything else. Every 2 days, the 5 of us will be holding an evaluation, and by then we expect you to have already gotten to know each other enough to share details about your personal lives, be they small or significant. We hope that you enjoy your stay, and I'm very excited to be seeing you soon. Half an hour later, each of us had unpacked and made themselves comfortable in their respective bedrooms. I have to admit that Ajay was not one to talk much, and when he did, I could almost feel how irritated he was that I was trying to get him into a conversation. But in the end, those were Dr. Madison's instructions, and that's why all of us were here. If he didn't want to make an effort, I wasn't going to force him and was just going to turn to Maria or Amanda. Our first proper conversation was during lunch. The staff team brought various meals with and without meat, and careful to make sure that a variety of options was present for any potential allergies. It was impressive to say the least. I thought about how expensive all of this must have been for them, and what they had to get from offering it for free, but it was experimental, I guess. Everyone opened with sharing what they do for work. Maria was a waitress in one of the bigger restaurants in the city, a job she started so she could pay her tuition at university, though she didn't mention what she was studying. Amanda, though retired, ran a large charity I'd heard of, the aim of which was to help the disabled, and Ajay was a police officer. A real shocker, that one. I was the last to speak, telling them I work as a nurse in the private hospital at the edge of town. While we were at the table, I made a few mental notes about each of the 3, like how Maria would always smile and look away when I spoke to her, how Ajay was listening more than talking, and how Amanda's hands trembled while trying to bring the spoonful of soup to her mouth. I was worried what they might have seen of me already, and how bad it might just get in the coming days. That evening, the four of us collectively decided to enjoy some snacks after dinner in front of the TV and watch a game show. After about an hour, Amanda had gone to bed saying she was exhausted and needed rest, while Ajay matter-of-factly stated that he was bored and secluded himself in our bedroom with a book he'd brought himself, leaving me and Maria alone on the couch. Though having met only a few hours ago, I was enamored by her beauty and character, and we must have spent at least an hour and a half getting to know each other before she fell asleep on my shoulder. Her presence calmed me and helped me forget the real reason I was here, if only for mere moments. Maria's family never had a lot of money, and she was mostly providing for herself now, leaving her parents to care for her twin little brothers 2 hours worth of a drive away from here, and that before getting the job she had now, she was working 2 other jobs at the same time. I was happy to hear that she was starting to do better for herself. Not wanting to wake her, I leaned my head back on the couch and was fast asleep soon enough. The second day was rather uneventful, but that's not to say it wasn't going well. I noticed everyone was in a better mood than yesterday, and they were actually talking to each other, sometimes even laughing. I even had the pleasure of being asked a few questions by Ajay, who himself shared that his reason for being here was a scene he'd reported to a while back that left him thinking if he should hand the badge in and find work elsewhere. He didn't elaborate, though, and I decided it was not my place to push him. As for Amanda, I saw her take out a handbag full of medicine, which had my heart drop for a second before she explained that she had to take them at various times of the day for her cancer treatment. She was surprisingly open about it, but still out of respect, I stopped asking questions after that. The meals that second day were much more enjoyable, and we seemed to start finding common ground together despite the age variety, Maria being almost 45 years younger than Amanda. We all stayed up a little later that evening and played a board game accompanied by a glass of wine for each of us, but Amanda, who was adamant we don't pour it away lest we deem her the party killer. Again, after the game ended, only Maria and I remained in the living room, but I was too distracted by what I'd been trying to keep to myself since lunch earlier, and it was that my withdrawal symptoms were beginning to occur. I excused myself and quickly ran off to the bathroom, and then straight to bed, leaving Maria confused and alone in the living room. The third day began with breakfast, and immediately after it, our first evaluation from Dr. Madison. She was dressed elegantly, and accompanying her were 2 men who wouldn't speak and stood beside her on each side as she sat in front of us with a serious look, quite unlike her from what we had seen so far. "Good morning. From what we've seen so far, you've gotten comfortable with each other, that's good. Some of you have began sharing more personal aspects of your lives, and others have been growing close, have you not?" She threw a glance towards me and Maria, who was sitting to my right, and then continued. "Now it's time for the real treatment to begin. Amanda, why don't you tell everyone here why you signed up for our session?" All eyes darted to Amanda, who lifted her eyebrows in surprise and cleared her throat. "Well, as I've told them and you already, I'd love to have some support and advise while I am going through my cancer treatment. It can be a lot to deal with for someone on their own." "Indeed, it can be. And have you shared with them that most of the money you make from your organization is actually not used to aid the disabled, but in fact goes for your medicine and other treatments?" Maria gasped while Ajay threw Amanda a dirty look and shook his head. I was shocked too, of course, but I could understand it, to an extent. But why was Madison being so upfront and hostile about this? "So you use the money people send you to help those in desperate need to help yourself? They're people just as much as you are." I was taken aback by Maria's sudden blow towards Amanda, and she looked at her with an open jaw and hand to her chest as if pleading innocence, but was interrupted by Madison. Now, Maria, people go to great lengths when they are desperate. And while what Amanda is doing is not right from your point of view, I am sure she can explain it sensibly. Like how you can explain manipulating your customers into leaving you more money, I assume." Her words seemed to pierce Maria's chest, and she was defeated. "I thought you'd keep our reasons to yourself," she shouted at her. "Yes, none of this will ever leave my mouth to anyone not involved in our project," were my exact words. "Confidentiality is a given between us and our patients, which all 4 of you are. Think about it as a version of exposure therapy. Like I said, facing your fears and regrets is one of the first steps to overcoming them, just like you with your opioid addiction, Carlos." My newborn fear had almost instantly come to be as Madison revealed in front of everyone in the room my biggest secret, and I was met with repulsed glances from Amanda, Maria, and Ajay. I had nothing to say and lowered my head. "Is that why you've been pacing around and shaking like a damn junkie, Carlos? You're sick, man." Ajay joined in, verbalizing what I assumed to be the thoughts of everyone else. I didn't find the courage to defend myself, because the word he used was exactly how I'd feared I would be perceived. "Aggression is not an effective way to deal with any type of trauma, Ajay. The last time you resorted to it, the man you were supposed to save died before the ambulance could arrive. Remember? Before Madison could even finish talking, Ajay shot up and sent the chair back, slamming his hands on the table on his way up. You don't know what you're talking about, you bitch. Get me the hell out of this place right now. I'm done. He started making his way to the door and was interrupted by one of the men who placed a hand on his chest and pushed him back. I'm afraid I can't let you or anyone else leave, Ajay. You've agreed to staying the entire course of the session, and you have 4 days left to go. 5, if you include today. As Ajay tried to push the man away and leave the room himself, he was immediately apprehended by him and thrown into the table, pushing it away and falling on the floor, all 3 of us jumping back and gasping in response. You can't do this, woman. Let us out now, Amanda ordered in, as demanding of a tone as her voice could bring itself to, but she was met with the same condescending retort from Dr. Madison, who stood up and brought the chair she was sitting on back under the table. During this time, my eyes trailed to the other man still by her side, who'd put a hand behind his back and was looking towards Ajay's direction. Like I said, you've agreed to participate until the end of our session. I simply cannot let you leave, even more so when you take into consideration that the results from it will help us learn more about our psychological nature. So this is just some damn experiment, isn't it? Not even a smudge of therapy to be found here, is that it? We're just your little lab rats? I was livid and wanted out as much as the rest of them did, if not more. You may find this very therapeutic in the end, Carlos, if you reach the end. Had she just said, if? Before I could pressure her further on what she meant, the entire room, including Dr. Madison, was shocked when Ajay grabbed the man who tackled him and threw him onto the ground when he knelt down to help him back up, punching him and pinning his neck to the floor with his elbow. He seemed to be applying pressure because instantly after the guard began kicking wildly and trying to free himself of his hold. You don't get to decide shit, Madison. I instinctively pushed Amanda and Maria behind me, who were each yelling words I couldn't make out through the rush of adrenaline that had swept over me like a wave. Get us out of here unless... A loud shot rung out and forced everyone on their knees. Ajay let out a pained yell and dropped on the floor, the guard he'd kept down taking several deep breaths before getting up and kicking the policeman in the ribs, causing another yelp and making him curl up into a ball even further. I looked towards Madison and the other man who was still keeping his pistol aimed at the injured Ajay. She cleared her throat and readjusted herself, pulling on her coat. Acts like these are only going to get you into legal trouble at the end of the session. Don't waste your breaths threatening with lawyers or whatever else you think of. Everything here is government approved. Her gaze turned to the 3 of us. Your friend will be checked by medical professionals before we bring him back to you, assuming he doesn't cause any more trouble. Ajay was forcefully lifted up by Madison's other guard and basically thrown outside the room, followed by the other 2 as she spoke once more before the door shut, leaving 3 terrified people of what might come next.